The Dilemma of the Commons. Jotchai Benkler has written a book titled The Wealth of Networks: How Social Production Transforms Markets and Freedom. It is a great book, but it is also difficult to understand. In its very basic form, and this is one of Benkler's key arguments, the progress of technology makes sharing feasible and a good idea. This seems simple, and yet it is so difficult to understand. It is perhaps easier to go back in history and to look into situations in which sharing has not been a good idea. The Dilemma of the Commons describes such a situation. Long way back, farmers shared a common grazing land. Each farmer had a small number of cows, let us assume 3 each. As their families grew, they argued that they needed to have more cows to feed and clothe the family. After a while, each family was adding cows to the common pasture, until one day the cows had eaten all the grass and the common could no longer contain the overgrown population of cows. In came the society and ruled a law to limit the number of cows on a pasture. In some cases, because of historical path dependence, we have been able to create laws which allow sharing and which even by today's standards are efficient. One such law is the common right in Finland to go during the summer into the forest and pick the berries from the forest. The fact that anyone can go is perhaps the most efficient way to ensure that as many of the berries get picked as possible. Even today, the estimates are that only 10% of the berries get picked. This all makes sense. Also, the laws make sense. However, because of developments in technology, sharing can become possible. In these situations, laws which were reasonable in the old environments with old technology and old constraints are no longer reasonable and justified. Like in the case of the Dilemma of the Commons, it is easy to understand that regulation is needed. But when a situation changes because of new technology and laws are perhaps no longer needed, moving in the other direction and dismantling or reorganizing rights is not easy. In our present societies, we have several laws in which we limit access or in which, to create common resources, we have ruled that taxes should be collected. Technology changes this. Because of the development of technology, the amount of both computer storage capacity and the amount of transmission capacity has during the last 10 years grown 1,000-fold. Today we have transmission capacities of over 100 megabytes and storage capacities of hundreds of gigabytes at the use of a single individual. Building an information society is very much about the reallocation of resources and also the reorganization of rights. The restructuring of the music industry is a great example. Technology made copying of music possible. Many people, especially youngsters with no funds, wanted to share music and copied music illegally. At some stage, the estimates were that up to 80% of the young generation is copying illegally. Revenues in the music industry were dropping. The industry had to do something. It had to find new business models, and models like that of Spotify emerged and also became accepted by the industry. The book industry has been slower to change. Imagine what would happen if students were as interested in books and in learning as they had been in music. Would they not copy their textbooks illegally or sit in class with an illegal video camera and film the lesson? Would this not lead to the emergence of a read any book for €10 per month library, or have the potential to change education by sharing lectures? Perhaps reading and learning is not as sticky, in other words, as interesting as music. There are some interesting examples of reallocation of rights. One is number portability. Today, the individual consumer can keep his or her phone number when changing operators. This made changing operator easier to the consumer because the consumer has no switching cost in changing operator. Another example is the wireless local area network, in other words, the wireless LAN. Earlier on, only the operator was allowed to set up a frequency using device. Frequencies were regarded as a scarce resource, and regulating use in with the same logic as in the dilemma of the commons was seen as the only option. With the emergence of the wireless LAN, anybody could set up a wireless LAN anywhere he or she wanted. Very confusing at the beginning was also the fact that anyone could also leave the wireless LAN open for anybody else to use. Today, it is almost the norm that a public place, like an airport or a coffee shop, will have an open wireless LAN access. A reallocation of rights has also happened in copyright. The Creative Commons license is regarded as a copyleft. In a traditional copyright, you might ask the original content producer for the copyright. In the Creative Commons concept, you authorize others to copy, and you can limit, for example, can it be used for commercial or only for non-commercial use. When using mobile applications, many services, for example, ask you to share your location information. This information shared by several, the application producer can then aggregate and perhaps give back to the user value added from the data collected from several users. From this perspective, it makes sense for the individual to share. However, this information might also be used for other purposes, which are not to the benefit of the user, and hence ethical questions about the use of data surface. The emergence of the information economy will see the reallocation of resources, the reorganization of rights, the challenges of openness, and attempts at creating services that really stick and in which consumers depend on. Perhaps the best way to learn is to look at and search for existing examples and study them closer.